Good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be between all of you today. My presentation won't be as funny as yours, Doctor. I will not have ayat in it, but I'll have some fruitful information, inshallah. My presentation starts about shaping a country through smart identity systems, and basically we'll talk about the experience of Emirates ID and throughout the presentation. Within the coming 15 to 20 minutes, we're going to talk about an introduction about the identity management ecosystem. Then we're going to talk about Emirates ID as a national identity provider in the UAE, talking some about the risk of identity theft, then talking about the national ID and security, and then finally some conclusion remarks that we will conclude with. At the beginning, we all know that there are a lot of scattered practices of identity management. There is no one entity that provides the identity management and providing identity to the population. There are silos of identity management. There is no interoperability and there is no mutual trust between all of them. So there is a need to establish a trusted identity for an individual that can be used across the different domains in the country. So there is advantages and benefits that are shown, and we always speak on them in the conferences and the conferences around the world. For the past 20 years, there are a lot of global initiatives with regards to identity federations that will enhance and provide single sign-on services and enable seamless identity management and provide identity verification services. What is the ecosystem of the identity management? It includes a lot of components. It's around 10 components. We'll start with the identity provider, which is, an example is Emirates ID. It's the entity that provides and issues the identity to an individual. A service provider is basically the entities that provide services. It's either public or the private sector or even the financial institutions. You have the service seeker, which is the individuals that are going and they own their identity by themselves. Digital identity is basically an electronic copy of this identity that can be used remotely. And then the identifiers are the parameters that identify a person. It could be metadata, or it could be a biometrics information, so every single data that can be used to identify a certain. Credentials are the certificates that used to authenticate the person. Application domains are the different domains that those identifiers could be used to authenticate the person. Identity assertion is the proof of the identity of a person, and then circle of trust is basically when you have those different domains of applications and they're trusted using the identity provider, and single sign-on where the authenticated person could enter to different services while he's authenticated. The identity provider comes in the heart of this ecosystem, and it plays a pivotal and key role in the identity management. In the context of the multi-organization identity management systems, the ID provides a role that becomes crucial in the authentication of those users. When the service providers trust the identity provider, there is a respect of authentication of this user, and they can duplicate it. So they feel the benefits of the authentication and enhancing the services that they provide. Each service provider would manage his identity management with respect to the privileges he gives to his customer. But from an identity authentication perspective, it's the role of the identity provider. How can we build this trust? There are well-established models that have promoted governments to move up the value chain. Governments have always been the providers of identity through ID cards, through passports, through driving license, or different examples, and they're always the government that plays the role in that. So you don't have a private sector that provides or issues an identity for an individual. With the trust and identity assertion becoming the need of the hour, and the advancements of the internet and the remote service deliveries, the government identity systems have evolved throughout the years, and complete with the digital identity, various electronic identifiers and credentials that provide and enhance the life cycle. Emirates ID, and what did Emirates ID have done as a national identity? So basically what do we do in Emirates ID is we link the biographical details with the biometrics at the registration for the residents and the citizens. For the residents, we also link it to the residential details. We cross-check it regarding with the database that we have, and we ensure there's no duplications. When we assure there's no duplications, then we create the unique ID number. And then the smart ID is given to the person. So the smart ID is not basically, the smart card is not just a plastic card, it's a smart chip. It has all the parameters identified in the smart chip. It can be used, match on and match off cards for validation and verification of an identity, and it could be used on-site or remotely in service providers. So this platform it's perfect for a trust between entities and could be used cutting across service domains. This is the framework that is used for digital ID issuance, ID services, and identity management. And the key to this digital identity is the ownership of the government, as I mentioned in the beginning. Identity assurance from the government need to be backed up by two. One is the legal enforcement and the legal systems, and two is the national ID authentication framework. And we've worked with this, and we're going to talk about it, which we call it the validation gateway in Emirates ID. So both of those, consisting an authentication gateway and verification validation services with an effective identity lifecycle management. Risk of identity theft. I mean, everyone hears about identity theft. People are scared not to go buy things online because, okay, my credit card is going to be stolen, my ID is going to be stolen. And it says statistics show that there is an increase in the number of risks in identification. And specifically, when we talk about the verification of customer identities. So specifically, this is one of the challenges that we're facing. What did national ID? So we have the risk. We're facing a lot of inputs that we find around the world. So there is a need of a mechanism to ascertain the identity. What Emirates ID or the UAE done is we have the smart ID card that's given to the individuals and citizens and residents. So what we call it is the validation gateway. So it's a strategic initiative designed to support and develop a digital and knowledge economy in the UAE. It introduces a radical change in the G2C services and provide both in public and private accounts. This validation gateway has been first used in 2011 by ADSEC in the UAE. So it's one of the first entities, the government entities that use this validation gateway. What is the strategic objectives of this project? Basically, it's to authenticate the ID card holders, to validate the identity, and to use digital signature and timestamp. The strategic dimensions, there are three different dimensions that we look at, from a security perspective, from an economy perspective, and from a service delivery and customer enhancements processes. So basically, this whole infrastructure, you can authenticate remotely or on-site, and it enables all different types of transactions, either G2G, G2C, etc. This is a flow of an example of how this can be done. For example, when you log into Abu Dhabi portal, you can log in using your ID card, not a username and a password. So you choose the services that you want, and depending on, for example, of the level of the intensity of the service, you can either do multi-factor authentications. Either you just use your PIN, which is at the beginning was identified by you by your biometrics in the card, or by both having a PIN and a biometrics. And then this will cross-check at the back end with the infrastructure that's provided by Emirates ID to validate and authenticate the card holder. So if it's genuine, then the transaction will take place. If not, it's going to be stopped. So the National Validation Gateway ensures that not only the identity processes is seamless and enhances service delivery, but also the improved business processes leading to strong bottom lines. So there will be reduced identity theft, and the loyalty and the customer service will be much better. We're currently working at, it's a study that we're working on. Basically, it's going to be published in 2014. It shows that there will be benefits from the usage of this card to be around 1 trillion dirhams. So it will look at, because the resource productivity benefits, so you'll be better using your employees in an efficient way. There are consumer benefits, paper reduction using the card, so you will not need to copy and just save some information. And you will also, there is a space reduction. This one will all have for example, let's just take, I always like to talk about the first example of the success stories that we talk about is Dubai courts. They've already published this in the news. When they just started using their cards, not taking information, just trading from the card, The amount of time for each transaction lowered from 5 minutes to 5 seconds. So you can imagine the efficiency on using your employees, the paper reduction, the time, it all concludes at money. It's like tangible results that we find. Concluding remarks. In summary, being the main vehicle for establishing the identity, the national ID card, it provides a strong framework for increasing the governance and providing internal controls. The card and the identity management complies with all international standards and regulations, providing a secure, verifiable identity. The outcome of this is the ability to have self-services interfaces and enable reduction in cost by availing the services using automation on policy enforcements. This ability, backed by a centralized audit trail, provides a strong backbone for business to be carried out innovatively and provide agility to the business itself. This only reduces ID operation cost, but also provides the much touted user efficiency and productivity. We can also say that we need an integrated automated identification systems and the multi-factor. So, for example, in Emirates ID, for now, we just use the biometrics, but in the future, we're working on iris and getting other having all those biometrics together would give you faster processing and reduces time for search and match. And having the new technologies on board also enhances the advanced identification systems. A government back-end national ID, identity assurance, and identity lifecycle management will contribute to the national economy as a whole. I would also urge you to just go to our website, UAE Validation Gateway, so you have more information of the validation. What are services? There are services that you can basically even read what is saved in your card as a person. Thank you so much, and if you have any questions, I'll be very glad to answer it.